So what I'm going to try to kind of lead off from what we just heard, what a fabulous, brilliant presentation, is kind of trying to think about a question that I get asked all the time, that, how do you create an organization culture? How do you create high-performance teams? And more importantly, how do you kind of outlast time, which is kind of, the holy grail of everything that we try to do. So, let me start off with a very simple question. How many of you tend to think about write New Year resolutions? Anybody writes New Year resolutions or thinks about New Year resolutions? Good, great. So I think that's one of the dumbest ideas because New Year resolutions are like vision and mission statements of a company, You think on the 1st of January that you're going to lose weight. This is the year you're going to, go to Everest Base Camp. You go out there and pay the 3 months, gym membership in one shot. And by 26th January, you're kind of thinking, this is my first long weekend. By Holi, it's definitely gone. And all that gujia and all that is coming your way, it's definitely gone. Vision and mission statements of a company are exactly like New Year resolutions. And just like New Year resolutions cannot make you lose weight or get healthy or get to your goals, writing vision and mission statements also don't get you anywhere, right? And the reason for that is you've got to stand up, you've got to wake up early in the morning, you've got to wear your shoes, you've got to go make that effort, go for a run, go for a walk, go work out, got to watch what you eat, you've got to kind of calculate how much food you're going to put into your body. If you're going to have a big dinner coming up, then you've got to kind of plan for that. You've had a big dinner last night, you've got to compensate for it the next day. So it's a never-ending work in progress, right? And companies, organization cultures, and that journey towards where we want to get to is that constant journey in pursuit of excellence, And just like the human body, as you grow older, your body starts getting tired and your arteries start getting clogged. Things that you could do when you were 19 years old, you can't do anymore. And you've got to kind of actively work against it. Organizations are exactly like the human body. The system takes over, And before you know, bureaucracy takes over, and that starts clogging the arteries. And you've got to find a way to constantly declog those arteries, right? And that's the very first step to creating high-performing organizations. So the very first question that I ask people to ask themselves is, what is your one big objective? If you want to truly create a high-performing culture that your entire organization gets focused behind, it's very important to know what your objective is. If you want that your colleagues will work with that same entrepreneurial spirit that your founders, or if you are a founder, you are working with, then you've got to inculcate that entrepreneurial spirit. And you know what entrepreneurs do best and what they do first? They look for an opportunity. The whole world is around them, and they see world go by, and they're looking around, and then they suddenly spot a gap. They spot a hole that no one is addressing, and they see, here's an opportunity for me to create a great business, right? So if you want that last person standing in the line, at the front line, where no one is watching, to behave in that same spirited, passionate manner, then it has to start off with this clear answer to what is our one big objective, and you say that to everyone. So for instance, whether it was 2005, and I can see some of my ex-colleagues actually over here, they can validate what I'm saying. They're a good reference check when I'm not in the room. Or for that matter, in the middle of the pandemic, when we thought of starting Akasa, we said, what's our one big objective? And that one big objective was not to create a unicorn or a phoenix. It was not to create the world's largest or fastest growing or the most profitable. The idea was, hey, can we create something where we can constantly prove that low cost has nothing to do with low quality? Can you create a very high quality product, a very high quality organization, a very high quality level of service excellence, but at a ferociously cost conscious level? And almost any business that I've been involved with in the last few years, whether it's a restaurant in London, or whether it is Akasa, or whether it is Indigo, or whether it is Ashoka University, or whether it is electric, aircraft company that I'm involved with in Chennai, or a tech business fintech business out of London. The idea is, can you create this really, really high quality product, but at a ferociously cost-conscious level, right? So if that's the objective, then that's the first message that you've got to give out to your entire team. The next thing that entrepreneurs ask, or most people ask when they are building a business, when you're thinking about a new business, and the same question applies to each one of our colleagues, is what do customers want? Again, quickly, that's the dumbest question to ask, right? After writing the New Year resolution. Because I do not know about your business, but in my business, and every one of the businesses I've been involved in, customers want a lot of things, they just don't want to pay for it, right? So if I did a customer survey today over here, and I said, what would you like on your next airplane? And you'd be like, can I get a bigger seat, a thicker seat cushion, a bigger seat pitch, a newspaper in the morning? Can you just throw in the food, somebody to carry my bag, clean my spectacles, color the airplane red and blue carpet, a lounge, and so on and so forth? And you'll be like, for sure, I can do that for another 4,000 rupees. And you'll be like, no. Can you imagine, when was the last time that you were standing in front of your laptop, if you were as old as me, or you were in front of your mobile app, and you were about to book a ticket, you had your credit card in your hand, and you said, which is that airline that serves chocolate mousse on board? I'm going to fly that airline. Never happens. You will never make a choice of that airline based on whether Deepika Padukone comes and gives you a blanket, or Yana Gupta is bringing a tray of food. Doesn't happen. Therefore, understanding what the customer will pay for and making sure that the entire organization understands what the customer will pay for is the difference, and a very critical difference, between wants and needs. Right? Dumb businesses chase wants. Great businesses consistently answer to the needs of the customer. Right? Okay? Because any business that you're in, irrespective of how big or small or large or working out of a garage, you will always have resource constraints. You will always have less number of people than you need. You will always have less amount of money than you need. You will always have to move faster than you are allowed to, right? And regulatory issues and the market dynamics and so on and so forth. So therefore, getting focused around what those customers' needs is super, super important. Okay? So now you've done this, but if now the team knows this is the business we are in, this is who my customer is, this is what the need of the customer that I am trying to solve for. Okay? Now, and by the way, this applies to everything. This applies to hotels. This applies to, I sit on the board of a large electric bus transportation business, mass transport. We run about 1,100 buses across the country. So you've got to make a choice, right? I mean, what kind of bus, what kind of seat, what is the distance, what will be the charging infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So anyway, now we've got a general picture that we're in this fighting army, we're going after this. Now, the next thing is, in the fog of war, there is this massive mountain range ahead of you, and the enemy line is behind that. Okay? Now, to get the team to perform at a very, very, stellar level, and with extreme ownership, the next important thing is to understand and to communicate to your teams which is that mountain, which is that silhouette that I'm actually trying to climb? Through this entire mountain range, and with the enemy line behind it, where do I go, right? Which is that mountain that I'm trying to climb? So, understanding that what is that path that's going to take me to that fortress that I'm trying to guard, right, is super important. Often I've noticed that when companies talk to a large number of employees and as the business is beginning to develop, there is this inevitable scope creep that begins to happen. That discipline starts falling apart, and before you know, you want to start doing 5 different things, and the employee is confused, and every second day there is some new set of KPIs that are coming, and that's taking you away from the fortress that you're trying to guard. And that takes immense amount of mental discipline to be able to do that. Because the human brain is such, we constantly get distracted by the next new thing that walked in through the room. But imagine Sachin Tendulkar burst into the world of cricket in 1989, right? At the age of 16, I think. And he soon became the world's best batsman. He retires 25 years later, not as the world's best captain, not as the world's best all-rounder, not as the world's best wicket-keeper or bowler or fielder. He retires as the world's best captain. Imagine, for 25 years, he does not get distracted, and he does not mind several times in his career calling someone else who was probably in his short pants while he was playing first-class cricket captain. Whether it is Dhoni, whether it is Ganguly, whether it is someone else, he says, that doesn't matter, it's all right. 1 billion people watching me live on live television, I'm the biggest hero on the field, but if what it takes for me to win the game is to call someone else captain while I focus on my skills of batting and being the world's best batsman, that's okay. And that's just a game. Imagine how many times did you accept the leadership of someone much younger to you, someone much more junior to you, someone with less experience, and said, that's my captain, that's my boss, and I'm going to accept their leadership because that's what's going to get us ahead. I got immensely lucky, but that was a miracle, right? I got immensely lucky that when at the age of 32, I became the president of Indigo, every one of my direct reports, without fail, every one of my direct reports was senior to me. My head of engineering had passed out of IIT Delhi before I was born. My head of flight ops had become a pilot when I was 2 years old. My head of in-flight had become a flight attendant when I was 5. My CFO had become a chartered accountant, a rank-holding chartered accountant when I was in class 2, and so on and so forth, right? But I got just lucky that they accepted my leadership, just as I accepted their leadership in so many different areas, right? That's what this picture reminds us of. And then you've got a really, really boring job, which is basically to go out there and repeatedly, consistently answer to the same need of that customer over and over and over again. So we used to say this all the time. This is actually not my line. This is actually the line from Bruce Ashby, who was the first CEO of Indigo, my friend and predecessor. And Bruce used to say, Aditya, we've got to be boringly consistent. And of course, we then built a whole culture around it. And I've tried to replicate that in many other places. And then years ago, I was speaking at one of these annual State of the Union type of addresses that we used to do. All these people are smiling, remembering that. And there was a colleague of mine, Nauzad, who used to, at that time, run the southern part of the airport operations. And he came up to me after the whole show was over, and he says, Aditya, just one thing, Mr. Ghosh. You keep saying we should be boringly consistent. I think we should be passionately consistent. And 10 years ago, I changed this slide to say, yes, you're right. We have to be passionately consistent. And I owe Nauzad for that bright idea that he gave me. Because great brands are built on just 2 pillars. I'm not a big fan of advertising. I'm not a big fan of marketing departments. in the true story, in the 14 years that I was involved in Indigo and the 10 years that I ran the airline, we had two youngsters straight out of college who were our marketing department, right? And but I'm a big fan of brands. I really enjoy building brands. And I think brands are built on two pillars. One is consistency and other is authenticity, right? We'll come to authenticity in just a bit, but consistency is what builds great brands. How many of you have been to a McDonald's? Come on, there are more of you who've been to a McDonald's. I know you're all kind of, we only dine at the Leela, but okay. How many of you think that two people can get a burger and an ice cream at a McDonald's in less than 300 rupees? Okay. How much does a McDonald's burger cost? How much does a McDonald's ice cream cost? So without knowing the exact price of the burger or the exact price of the ice cream, without me telling you which city, which country, which season, which year, they somehow made you believe it can be done. That is consistency, right? And having that ability to generate 1,000 people, 15,000 people, 20,000 people, 30,000 people, really enjoying delivering that over and over again. I was at an event yesterday, and I was listening to Rahul Dravid. He was speaking just before me. The wall. I mean, that consistency of being able to kind of do this thing over and over again. But it's a very boring thing. So why do people do it? How come when there are no cameras on board? By the way, airplanes don't have cameras on board, in case you didn't realize, right? And when no one is watching, why is it that people come up with that consistent level of service? In a bank, in a call center, in a hotel, there are cameras everywhere. In an airplane, there are no cameras. No one is watching, right? The reason, the secret sauce is, while most companies tell people what to do, some companies tell them exactly what to do. Rare of rare companies tell them why they're doing it. Okay? So years ago, I don't know if some of you remember, in the first 4 or 5 years of Indigo, we never used to serve tea and coffee because we were obsessed with cleanliness, right? And we didn't want the coffee to be staining the carpet or the granules to be on the tray table, and we wouldn't be able to clean it up. So then we had this aha moment. We came up with this thing. You add water, stir it. So, there is no risk of granules, etc. We poured it on the carpet. We cleaned it. We said, okay, we're going to be able to clean it on an overnight. So this is a big journey, and we started serving tea and coffee. So Vikram Oberoi, now the Joint Managing Director of Oberoi Hotels, was a very frequent traveler. I'm a big fan of the Oberois. So within a month, Vikram writes to me in those days, SMS, saying, Aditya, what's going on? What is with this tea and coffee? So I was like, what, you don't like it? She says, no, just dirtying the planes. Why are you doing this? I'm like, dirtying the planes? How is that even possible? And then I realized that, we were we were pouring the water, and we were giving the glass, and we were giving a stirrer. And good Indian coffee makers, we are fetoing the coffee, right? Right. And this thing is now splattering on the tray table. So since then, we said, don't trust customers, make the coffee, and hand it over to them. Now, that's an extra piece of work that a busy flight attendant has to do. But then why do they do it? Because you tell them that if you do this, we are not going to dirty the airplane, we are not going to dirty the tables, we are going to be able to clean the plane faster, and so on and so forth. Right? Why do you help Akasa collect trash? And now every airline collect trash. Because we kind of tell you that please help us, this will help us to fly the planes faster. Nobody before us was asking customers to help us collect trash. Okay? If you go and notice, there'll be a mop under the water basin because somebody goes and cleans the floor, right, and pushes the mop back under the wash basin. Imagine telling these 18-year-olds in their part of their training and say, you also have to mop the floor, right? Imagine trying to tell my daughter or son to do that, right? But they do it because they know why they're doing it. So the second item is not just knowing what your objective is and the sharpening it down to what the need of the customer is, but then also telling them why you're doing what you're doing. You know, in the last 6 years, a word that I've begun to hate with passion is hustle, okay? Every, startup that I'm involved in, everybody kind of wears this word as a badge of honor, hustle. I feel like hustle is like, standing on the roadside, you want to make a quick buck and you rob somebody's wallet, right? Agility, I'm a big fan of. Because remember, now let's come back to that scene of war, right? It's fog of war, it's raining, and there are bullets flying, and you can barely see the mountain, and your commander-in-chief has told you this is that particular summit to climb, right? And you're doing this, and what you expected, the playing field is changing, the opposition is changing, the opponent is coming at you from various places. That is agility. Agility is the ability to constantly dodge and weave and constantly redo your strategy and your execution depending on what is impacting you. When you're building great institutions, rather than hustle, let us build agility, because that is what's going to outlast time. Right? Because when you're hustling, chances are that you will take these short-term decisions, because that's kind of helping you meet a target, it's helping you meet an AOP, meet your KPIs, and so on and so forth. Imagine, over the years, people would have walked into the McDonald's boardroom so many times, right? And they would have said, you know what, we've got this problem. All these families come in, half the kids want pizza and half the kids want burgers. The one who want burgers, we keep them. And the ones who want pizzas, we lose them. We figured it out. We've got a great brand, great location, great training, and great customer base. All we need to do is put a pizza oven and we'll get 100% of the market share. And what amazing Sachin Tendulkar-like discipline that the board turns around, tells McKinsey that, great idea, that's for Pizza Hut. We'll take a vada pav and turn it into a $92 billion market cap business. Right? Years ago, I was sitting not too far at the Taj Palace in Dholakwan, not far from here, down the road, which will take only 2 hours right now. And I was sitting with my friend Rajiv Bajaj, and Rajiv said this to me, saying, Aditya, in business, just as in life, it's important to know what not to do. When I speak to, I invest in companies, I work very, I had, by the way, the ditto conversation with Kunal Shah last week and Nitin Kamath last week and Mukesh Bansal last week. We were all together in Bangalore, and I said exactly the same thing. Have a small list of things that you will do and have a longer list of things that you will not do. In the HR context, tell your employees to have a small list of things that they can be the world's best at and have a longer list of things, that they're not great at. Right? Because that will, in the context of business, it will remind you why not to get distracted. And in the context of people, it will force you to surround yourself with people who are better than you in that longer list. Right? I've never been a pilot in my life. I've never been a flight attendant in my life. I've never been an aircraft engineer in my life. I've never been a coder in my life, right? But I've found a way to, I've never even been an HR person, although I've consistently pretend to be one. But I've surrounded myself with people who are just very, very good at that longer list of things that I'm not good at. At the same time, Peter was mentioning, how things are changing, and it's now like a thing. Yeah, of course, we have to pivot, we have to change, so on and so forth. And I kind of imagine that the world has two graveyards right next to each other. One graveyard is of companies who did not change, and they became, they just kind of got outdated. Kodak, for instance, right? And on the other hand, we've got companies who changed so fast, and they offered so much to the customer which the customer was not willing to pay for. Our job as the leader is to walk that thin line in the middle and know just how much to change, right? And the secret sauce to that is to know the customer's life and say, how can I be relevant in the life of my customer? So my customer wants to capture images. So I've come up with a camera. My customer wants to create an album, so I come up with print shops. But I forgot, my customer is not obsessed with my camera or my printing. The customer is obsessed with actually capturing images. So if there was a better way to capture an image without printing, without ever going to a printer shop, without having a camera in my hand, that's what I should be chasing. So when you're thinking about innovation, what are the boundary conditions you set to innovation? Right? So many of our colleagues, when we hopefully build a listening organization, we want to people come up with ideas. The best filter for them to know and for you to know is this making a difference in the life of my consumer? Am I staying relevant in the life of my consumer? If I am, I should spend money, time, resources behind it. If not, great idea for someone else. Yeah? And the two best ingredients for creating a culture for change is respect and humility. Respect to know that you're standing on the tall shoulders of all those people before you, on whose shoulders you're standing today, because of whom you are where you are today. Because many of you, like me, are not involved in organizations which started yesterday. They are, organizations which have been built for 10, 15, 20 years. And the tendency is that every new guy who comes in says, what happened before us was complete nonsense. They had no idea what they were doing. And that breaks the culture. Right? So respect. And the humility to know I don't know everything. This is going to be a journey of discovery. And that is the first level of authenticity which comes from you. So when your colleagues are asking you something and you don't know something, don't pretend. Another dumb piece of advice is fake it till you make it. That's an absolute bullshit piece of advice. Right? There is no fear in being authentic to say, I don't know. Let me figure it out. We'll figure it out together. In fact, if you can come up with a better idea, tell me, and I'll respect you for that. Because each one of us, every one of us, right down to the front line, has that power to make a change. So then if it's also simple, what's our strategy to stay ahead? I think strategy is eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day by culture. And what is culture? Culture is nothing but a set of acceptable behaviors. And that's why when leaders change, the culture of the organization changes, because that leader says, this was acceptable then, not acceptable now, this is acceptable, wasn't acceptable then, this is acceptable now. Right? So the burden of leadership is on us, because we are putting together a set of behaviors that creates culture. It's like in your home, right? If your grandparents were still there, whether you would smoke or drink in front of them is a very different answer from if your cool uncle comes along and he says, it's all right, have a smoke with me. Did the values of the family change? No. Can the company be value-driven over a long period of time? Yes. Can the culture change? Absolutely, it will. Right? And if something is going well or not, it is the burden of the leader. Right? And therefore, understanding what is that set of cultural behaviors, that's what drives high-performing teams. Write it down, document it, code it, so that you never say, "Aisa hamare yahan pe nahi hota." It does not happen like this. But if when somebody says, "But what happens?" You're like, watch. But that watching takes a long time. In a high-growth companies, it needs to be written down. This is what it is. And likewise, for example, for me, the greatest example of work ethic is a security guard. That person does not look forward to an increment or a promotion. Most people don't even know their name. and yet they come to work every day, shoes polished, uniforms, ironed, standing in front and protecting you without even the incentive of someone knowing your name. So if you want inspiration, all you have to do is have eyes that observe, not just see, and ears that listen, not just hear. Right? Inspiration is all around us, and when you pick up these small things, that is what creates institutions and long-performing businesses. The second pillar was authenticity. Authenticity is very simple. You don't rely on marketing, on advertisement. The internal and external brand values have to align. And there are two risks that come against you: complacency and arrogance. There's nothing called failure. You've got to keep trying, fail faster, learn from it. It's a journey. And that's where your role as a leader comes in. Find that center and help your organization stretch. Help your colleagues stretch. Make that impact on other people's lives. Our role is far above and beyond our job description. Encourage and recognize those colleagues around yourself who are going above and beyond their job description, right? And finally, just chase dreams. Dreams are those things which are deeply personal to you and deeply personal to your colleagues. And if you can build an organization that helps you chase your dream, then that's when it will happen, when no cameras are watching. So this is the last question I always ask in every job interview I've ever taken. My rough estimate, I've taken 140,000 job interviews. In every job interview, I've always asked, what's your dream? And, so that's what you've got to kind of do. Right? So thank you very much.